Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'll call the public hearing to order. I have a statement to read out at the outset. This council meeting is being convened in order to hold public hearings on land use matters. The public and anyone who believes their interest in property is affected by the agenda items may speak or present written submissions. Everyone will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard at the hearing. No one should feel discouraged from making their views known. Those of you who wish to speak or have registered with the city clerk should, after being recognized by the chair, begin by clearly stating your name and your address. If you have provided a written submission, please make this known at the beginning. All written submissions will be retained by the city clerk and will form a part of the hearing, the record of the hearing. Each speaker may address the hearing a maximum of twice. The length of your first presentation will be limited to a maximum of 10 minutes. Your comments must be relevant and not obstruct the hearing. Any additional presentation, which must be on new information, will be limited to 3 minutes. Members of council may ask questions of you following your presentation. However, the function of council members during the public hearing is to listen to the views of the public, not to debate the merits of matters with citizens. Any debate by members of council will occur at the subsequent vote. So the order of the proceedings is normally, firstly, the city clerk will briefly describe the matter. Then the applicant or their agent will be invited to make a brief presentation of up to 10 minutes. Then the city clerk will identify any written submissions received. Oral submissions from the public will then be heard, and any further written submissions will be received, and the hearing will then be closed, and matters may be considered. Please note that delegations must present in a respectful manner without interference or comment from the audience. City Council is committed to ensuring a safe and respectful environment and supports the right of the community to bring comments forward. Please observe these rules. If you have any concerns with the manner in which the hearing is conducted, direct your comments to the chair. So, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. First item is Richmond Zoning Bylaw 8500, Amendment Bylaw 10433, RZ 17791-280. Location is 8180 Heather Street. The applicant is 1265028 BC Limited, Jinshu Zhao. The purpose is to rezone the subject property from the single detached RS1E zone to the single detached RS2A zone to permit the property to be subdivided to create 2 single family lots. First reading was March 27th, 2023.
All right, is the applicant here this evening? Yes, yeah. Did you wish to, we heard you a month ago, didn't we? And now, or 2 months ago?
Yeah, you heard our neighbor attended the meeting.
Okay.
Regrettably, we missed the very first meeting.
Did you wish to, do you want to speak to us? Come on down.
Yes.
If so, come on down and are these mics on? The presenter's mics on? Okay, please, you've had a seat. Please introduce yourself and tell us the upshot.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us here. My name is Terry. I am the designer for this development. And sitting beside me is James, our geotech engineer. So this property, it's a very simple case to begin with. We wish to subdivide the property in half, so that one into 2, and into 2 compact lots, and 2 linear house with a 4-foot side yard setback from each other. We propose to infill our property to match with the neighboring property height. Our current property was a bungalow back in the 80s, whereas our neighbors, they are both developed back in the 90s. So all we wish to do is to raise our property to match with the neighbor's existing grade. And now that the question is our neighbor on the east side, there's an existing concrete retaining wall, which we believe was temporarily serving as a grade separation between our existing garden and the neighbor's side yard. And by infilling our property to match with the neighbor, we will need to excavate part of the topsoil and the infill compact the lot, that inevitably may or may not be affecting that existing concrete retaining wall. However, we believe there is no impact at all to the neighbor's house that is standing. But our neighbor did not seem to agree with us, so they are worried about the retaining wall. So right now we are here to address any issues our neighbors may have, and we hope our application can go through.
So the retaining wall is just going to be left intact, is that right?
Yes.
And I think there was an idea of putting up a fence on your side, but now you're giving up on that, just leaving it the way it is.
If the neighbor insists on us not touching the retaining wall at all, even though we could in the beginning we could propose to remove it, replace with a new timber retaining wall. But if they refuse, we can leave the concrete retaining wall completely untouched.
All right. We have a question from Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, if I may, you just hit on it. So the neighbor would like you to leave the retaining wall alone.
Yes.
Can you function with that? Can you continue your development? We're talking the retaining wall, we're not talking the house or whatever.
Yes.
Can you live with that?
Yes, of course we can.
Then I would suggest you do
Absolutely.
that and it's done and let's get on with it.
All right. Thank you both very much. Stick around in case there's any more questions.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any written submissions?
None, Your Worship.
Anybody wishing to speak to us this matter on the agenda? Yes, sir. Please have a seat. Introduce yourself and tell us what's in your mind.
I'm the neighbor. My name is Gordon Hellinan. I oppose this development. I've said I've opposed this development. I built 38 years ago with having 20 feet all around my property on both sides. I like my privacy, and I don't want a house stuck that close to my property line. I'm adamant about it, so much so that if it does happen, I'm gonna leave.
All right.
The retaining wall, the report here from Summit, I read through it. I'll give you my background. I'm a mechanic by trade, right? I fix things like crazy for Air Canada, and I understand structural integrity. And they said the retaining wall is crap in this thing. It's falling apart. My fence is straight as an arrow, and I built it 9 years ago. It still looks brand new. If there was structural integrity, it would be crooked. I don't know one single fence in Richmond that's 9 years old that's straight. Mine's still straight. They showed pictures of the concrete that was, they said was cracking and that. I raised the concrete wall because Dolly, I wanted to build her a fence so her dog didn't get out, a foot, and I did it section by section because I was doing it by myself. And the steel supports, I end up putting in 2 pieces of rebar, the whole length on top of the rebar that was existing in the wall. The wall is solid and not falling apart. But they talked about all the soil samples on the wall that they dug down, but we dug down on the other side numerous times, and there's 2.5 feet of peat underneath the wall. I was gonna bring you all a little bag of peat, you know, and I said, nah, it'll be too messy, right? So there's peat underneath the wall. The L shape under the wall is probably about 3 feet, if I can remember right. It was 38 years ago, and I helped them even build a little bit of it because I was sitting around there in my house. You can't build on that wall with 2.5 feet of peat underneath it.
All right.
And not just that, I don't want a house there. Even if they wanted to build a house there. I've lived there 38 years. I've been in Richmond 65 almost. I built there, I hand built that house, and that was my dream house. And if I lose my privacy, why would I stay? It's a numbered account. We looked at the number account. We tried to find out who the number account belonged to. You can't find out who the number account belongs to. It's obscure. None of you are actually taking responsibility when you cast a vote. It's all up to me to actually go after the numbered account, which I'm thinking is in China. There's no responsibility here except for me to try to get repairs done. The wall is completely, when it was built, it was 3 feet high. It's now 4 feet high. We measured it, 3 feet high, and my footing was put right against the height of it. It was actually above it, but it was supported by it. That's one of the other reasons why I raised it a foot, so that I could build the fence and cover my footing. They're gonna have to dig down 6.5 feet below the top of that retaining wall. If they build 6.5 feet down, 4.5 feet pretty much is gonna be exposing on my sand base on my wall. My chimney is about 6 inches from the wall, the footing. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. There's trees under there. The roots are growing underneath the what do you call it? If they start messing around, pulling the trees out, the roots out, the wall's gonna be unstructured. It's gonna fall to their side because there's nothing there to protect it. Now my base is gonna be falling too. Just like that giant pit that's in Richmond right now, I'm noticing the drive going through it on 3 Road, it's sinking. It's been exposed for far too long. Sooner or later, the base goes out. The rain, the trucks going by. When I was taking time off this weekend, and I allowed my girlfriend to dig the hole, right? Because I've worked a lot of overtime. I work 12-hour shifts, and I'm 65 as a heavy-duty mechanic. I'm lying in bed, and I can hear her thumping on the wall. That's Richmond. Everybody knows that. A dump truck goes by, the room shakes. Do you really think that any construction anywhere near close to that wall isn't going to cause problems on my foundation? So it's not only that I want my privacy, I don't want destruction, and then try to find some numbered account in China or that, or wherever it is, and try to sue him on my own behalf when my house is already wrecked, and I don't want to live there anyway if the house is built. That's my argument.
All right, sir, thank you very much. Apparently, Councillor Day has a question. Just a minute.
All 38 years ago, right?
Retaining wall was built 38 years ago by Jack and Dolly.
Okay.
I had an old war house.
Okay.
It was, I had to raise it, cause I had 2.5 feet, I raised it 7 feet,
Yeah.
right? Scooped the peat out and then
So
and
you-
raised it up.
So you, like, my
So I
parents.
came.
Okay, she has a further
Yeah,
question.
so the reason I ask is, like, I have some experience at this. My parents lived on Granville Avenue, and they had to dig out all that peat and then fill it with sand. And then the sand had to set for, I think it was a year.
Yeah.
And finally, they could build their new house. Did you do something similar to that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you're settled, like, your lot.
I'm settled.
Yeah.
I have no cracks. I'm a fuss ass. That's why Air Canada likes me. I fix something, it stays fixed. I overbuild.
Yeah.
The workers we have now destroy the equipment. They hit the buildings, they wreck the things. High ups are getting smacked. I'm rebuilding steps so nobody gets
So
hurt.
getting back to your property, if they keep the retaining wall and keep your fence, and the trees are on your side, right?
Trees are on their side.
On their side, okay. Do we know if, we'll ask staff if those are coming out. If they, like, you're already on solid ground with your sand.
Yes.
If they leave your wall and then they dig out all that peat and they bring in sand so they're level with you, would that not solidify everything?
No, once you start knocking things around with heavy equipment, things move. It's why 4 Road is always wavy,
Yeah,
because you got peat on both sides.
okay.
You know, it's why that pit in the middle of Richmond, right? The roadways is caving in. All the cracks are along that one section. I drove by it yesterday. And
Okay,
Then I have some questions for staff. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to us on this item on the agenda? Anyone else? No, as the applicant, we'll come back to you. Are there any written submissions?
None, your worship.
Okay, we'll go back to the applicant. You had something to add? Come forward then.
Thanks for having me again. So I'm just making
Just a minute. I don't know what's,
just want to
just a minute, just a minute. Turn his mic on. There you go.
Yeah, thanks for having me back again. Just want to add one more quick comment, because on behalf of my clients, I have approached the neighbor personally on prior to the meeting to understand where his concern coming from. And as much as I understand his concern, his ultimate intention is for his house, the side yard of his house, to continue enjoy the status of facing the backyard of our subject property, which this situation cannot stay forever. From my client's point of view, or as homeowners, we have every right to build 4 foot
Yeah.
from the fence, regardless of today's of this subdivision. So that's what I'm trying to
All
add.
right. Councilor McNulty, did you have a question?
Not if the delegation.
Okay. Councilor Day has a question.
Yes.
Well, you've heard the concern.
Yes.
When he built his house, he
Yeah.
dug out all that peat, filled it up with sand, and now the retaining wall was built. What steps would you take to make sure that there was no damage to that retaining wall and the existing property?
We have a geotech engineer on board, and all engineers are subject to 5 million insurance. And we are building 4 foot away from the fence. His house is 4 foot away from the fence. We are 8 foot apart. This is a very typical situation in all over Richmond. Yeah.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, may I,
Move second, third. I'd like to ask staff a
Yeah.
question.
so that's moved and seconded. Councilor McNulty, just a minute. Go ahead.
Yeah, through you to staff. And thank you for the memo of June the 8th, Mr. Craig. Can we resolve this retaining wall to see that, again, I'm not an engineer, that the integrity of that wall will be retained and the house as construction goes next door?
Okay, just hang on a
Yeah,
second.
sorry.
I've got to get the mic on. I don't know what's happened to this panel here.
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, to answer your question, as per the recommendations of the applicant's geotechnical professional, the retaining wall would remain in place with the grade on this property being matched with that of the property to the east. So the retaining wall would stay with the fence as constructed above.
So will the city supervise just to make sure it does happen in case there is any infraction? Or will we be able to step in
So the
and either stop development until it is done so?
through your worship to Councillor McNulty, as part of the building permit application, again, they will be required to submit a thorough geotechnical study again as well. In addition, the geotechnical report that was submitted by Summit does indicate that they are recommending monitoring be undertaken during construction. That would mean including installing monitoring equipment both on the retaining wall itself. They have also made an offer to place such equipment on the neighboring property as well, subject to getting the neighboring property owner's authorization to do so.
Okay, that's the best we can do. Thank you.
Councilor Day.
Thank you very much. So, and I do remember what it was like when we did this at my parents' house. So you dig out all that peat on the new property, and then just takes a little while before you bring that sand in. What's to stop that retaining wall from falling?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, I believe that question may be best posed to the applicant's geotechnical consultant, as I'm not a professional in that field. What I would say is that, again, as part of the recommendation from the geotechnical professional, is that monitoring equipment be installed during the entire process in order to monitor for any subsidence.
Do you know if it would help if the trees on the new property would be retained?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, the trees on the current property, I believe the ones that you're referring to are actually a hedge. They are not bylaw sized in nature. As a result of, again, some of the site works and site preparation works that would be needed, those trees would be unlikely to survive that. So we are not recommending that that hedge be retained at this time. In the future, this would also be used as an area in order to access the secondary suite on the property as well.
Okay, and I guess, have we ever required that a new builder, when they're building this close to an existing property, because we know peat is very volatile. I mean, you know, like you can jump on it and it jumps up and down like a trampoline. So have we ever required that like a damage deposit be held for the owners of the property, for example, in this case, to the east?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, no, we wouldn't require a damage deposit for the adjacent property to be submitted as part of their undertaking for construction on the subject property.
Okay, Councillor Glanders.
Thank you. Yeah, question of staff. If the owners of the property to be developed were just going to build one giant house, they'd be able to do so obviously without a rezoning, it would just happen. Would they be able to build all the way to that same setback, the 4 feet from the fence?
Through your worship to Councillor Galanders, yes, for the purposes of this property, Dixon Road is considered the front yard. Accordingly, the east property line is a side yard. Any new construction on the property could be placed 1.2 meters off of the property line, consistent with what's proposed through this rezoning application.
So if we weren't doing the subdivision and someone was going to build a big mega house, it would be facing Dixon Ave, not Heather, and they would have a giant house 4 feet from the fence anyway.
Through your worship to Councillor Galanders, that's correct.
Okay, so developing.
All right, we'll call the question then on the motion. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
I have one question. So
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. Your participation is finished, okay?
but you're
You,
allowing it to be developed.
no, you can speak to staff if you want. Yes, the matter has been approved.
So you're allowing it to be developed and allowing.
Sir,
2,000
please sit
to be
down.
built there.
Please sit down.
No, I just want to state.
No,
my piece.
no, sir, you're not gonna say your piece.
I did say.
No, you're not going to say anything more. We're going to the next item. You
go
can
the
speak
next
to
item,
staff.
but I just want to clarify, you've all
Okay.
now allowed.
Please,
me
go
to-
ahead.
To build two houses.
Thank you,
on the
Worship.
lot beside.
Item number 2 is Richmond zoning bylaw 8500,
You've allowed.
amendment bylaw 10447, RZ 22027435.
That have kicked me out of Canada.
Location is 9671 Number 1 Road.
I'm gonna send a letter
Applicant
to every member.
is
of
Bradley
the
Dorr.
federal government, and you're
Purpose
all
is to
gonna be
rezone the
named.
subject property from single detached RS1E to compact single detached RC2, to permit the property to be subdivided to create 2 single-family lots, each with vehicle access from the rear lane. First reading is May 8, 2023.
Sorry, everybody, for that. So we are on the second item, which is 9671 Number 1 Road. And I believe the applicants are here, are they not? Yeah, we got word that Bradley Dorr, Norm Hole, Ben Tadai, pardon the pronunciation, but, yeah. Do you want to make a presentation or just wait questions? Wait, okay, there you are.
Are we ready? My name is Brad Dory. I am the designer and the applicant on this particular rezoning.
Please pull the mic right in and speak.
Okay, is that better?
Yep.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for giving us the opportunity to speak. Staff, thank you for your hard work on this job. We have a rezoning and subdivision 9671 number 1 road. You can see on the aerial photo there, it is one of a handful of remaining undeveloped sites along number 1 road. We are proposing 2 new single-family RC2 sites be built on there. With regards to the affordable housing strategy, we are proposing secondary suites in both the new houses. If you flip to page 2 in our presentation there, site overview. This subdivision will result in 2 33 by 110 foot sites. Each new site will have a 2,176 square foot single family dwelling, and as I said, with regards to the affordable housing strategy, we will have secondary suites in both houses. I'd like to mention that we are providing generous 2-level suites in each of the homes. And with homes of this size, that is particularly challenging. We only have a main floor footprint of 1,140 square feet, yet we are providing suites that are, well exceed the minimum zoning requirements. When we were first looking at this project, we were challenged with access to the site. If you see along the front property line there are trees from north to south all the way along the front property line. So our first point of contact was to go to a project arborist and find out which trees were candidates for retention, which trees were candidates for removal, and how would we access this site. You can see that trees 53 through 58 there in the middle of the property were identified as trees that were candidates for removal. Our project arborist is here, we'll let him speak to that later. So we were designing for access through what is the existing center of the site where the new demising property line would be. What I should note when we're looking at this is if you go to slide number 3 on there, we have a substantial grade change that occurs between number 1 road and the existing grade for the site and what we need to provide for the floodplain control level for the main floor elevations. So if you look where you see the tree on that site section, the sidewalk is up substantially higher, and we've got to come down to where the existing grade is and go back up to the finished floor level. Now, on top of providing pedestrian access through here, we also have to get our site services through there. So if you look at slide number 4 in there, our site servicing corridor, you can see the heavy green line in the upper left-hand corner there. That's our stormwater that's got to come through that space. We also have to get gas, as well as probably hydro, TELUS, Shaw, etc., through that corridor. So the grade change is probably, in conjunction with a number of trees there, our biggest challenging factor. So I'm going to hand this over to our project arborist, who can speak more about the trees and how we chose to service through there.
Evening, Norm Hall from Arbortech Consulting. So if we go to the next slide, it's just a overview. On the left side, you'll see our tree assessment findings, and we've ranked the trees based on their pre-existing condition. In this case, the tree on the south side is ranked as a 2, which means it's got some defects, but it's retainable. And up on the north end, there's 2 trees that are also 2s in the same category. In the middle, there's those 6 trees that Brad mentioned, and they're all ranked as low viability because they have more significant defects. Next slide. So that's a view from across the street. To the left is the south side, and that's a cedar tree with multiple stems, but they're all originating from the base. So there's no real significant structural impairment there. It's something that the tree can sustain for a long term. On the right side, the trees number 59 and 60 are 2 trees that have not been previously topped or impaired from human intervention. They're also retainable, and that's the plan, is to anchor both sides of this site with those retained trees. Next slide, please. This is the central trees. It's a pair of cedar trees that are side by side. They form most of the canopy in that central part of the site. And if you look at the picture on the left side, both of those trees have this angled limb that comes off. And the close-up on the right side shows the second tree with the same thing, but also a twin stem with a crack actually developing in the union. And this is a direct response to being previously topped in its long-term history. And those defects, well, they're not probably high risk today, but they will be in the foreseeable future. So that's the reason we've ranked them as low viability. We know that these trees are just not going to be good trees for the long term. Next slide, please. The other 4 trees, one is a double stem that you see leaning in that both those photos. It's currently a risk tree. And the other ones are very spindly, very small taper in their trunks, and they've got a very high crown. So with the removal of any tree adjacent to it, those trees would be high risk as well. Next slide. And then there's a spruce tree, which is number 58. And it's got, in the left photo, you'll see there's a bare foliage, no foliage in the lower half. And the photo on the right shows that it's a top-heavy crown, and if we remove those central trees, that tree also would be destabilized. It just wouldn't be able to stand the winds. Next slide, please. So as Brad mentioned, and I'll make this quick, the central 6 trees are proposed for removal, not specifically only because of their pre-existing health, but because as soon as we talk about getting services in there, we've got trenches to be dug. We've explored opportunities for things like low-impact trenching, things like trenchless servicing, but none of those are viable because of that significant grade change. And those 2 larger trees in the middle are actually very finely rooted, very shallow rooted, and as soon as you try doing any kind of a low-impact trench through a root system like that, you're destroying the root system in any case. So there's just no other opportunity to service this subdivision unless we remove those trees. And then lastly, to enable the retention of those trees on the corners, we've found some really innovative ways to get access to those new homes, and we're using a suspended structure. The applicant is going the extra mile to spend the extra money to build these suspended structures to get access through over top of the root systems, and taking the care to provide for those trees as the construction proceeds.
All right, we have a question from Councillor Galanders.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much for providing the tree report. I really appreciate that. I had questions about these at the last meeting because it's my neighborhood and I know the trees. I'm just curious. I think a lot of it has to do with the services that I think that it looks like 53 and 54, the 2 main ones, would probably live another 50 years more without issue. I mean, it looks like the tops were broken off. Perhaps they formed new tops, you know, when that happens when they're young, as opposed to being topped. Is it just a structural growth defect?
So yes, most of the impacts that we're talking about are related to servicing, but the question about how and why these trees have multiple tops in the form that they do, it's very likely that it's related to previous topping. It's very unlikely that it's related to a natural occurrence, especially when it happened down low on the trunks like that. And I suspect that there was probably some hedging in the long distant past with people that planted native trees that were nice little puppies when they planted them, and then they grow up to be big dogs and they topped them.
Down the street on one road, there's a few examples of large trees like this that were retained right in the center of homes that were split into 2 lots. And they're right in the center, and they've got like a wood platform around them kind of thing. So how does that work with the services on those sites?
Yeah, I'm very familiar. I was working on that project also that you're referencing. And in that case, the services were on either side of the properties. So the trenches had to be installed for storm and telecom and hydro, etc. And that was all done underground at the property lines instead of at the center.
So it's a different situation.
Completely different situation, but we're saving anchor trees on the sides of these lots rather than in the center and sharing it.
Okay, and then my final question, when you're talking about getting access to the site, I don't think the construction goes in off of one road. Wouldn't they just use the lane?
Oh, I'm talking about
Just the
homeowner
services
access
Okay.
with the path at the center of the
Sidewalks.
site. And then to get to the front doors, along parallel to the front of the house, extending over top of the root zone where you see the hatched area on my plan, that's actually a suspended pathway, similar to what you're talking about on the site up north on number 1 road, where it's a suspended structure that will provide access over to the front doors.
I had another question for the applicant, not related to the trees. Would that be now?
Go ahead.
Okay. When we were initially presented with this proposal, it was mentioned that the house was vacant, but I noticed that there are people living there. So I was just wondering if the circumstances had changed or...
I'll defer to the property owner, Ben, today.
Yeah, my name is Ben today. My wife owns the company that owns the property. The reason that it was vacant is because we made the application prior to the date we closed on the property. We closed on the property on January the 6th. The application was made beforehand, so it was empty at that time.
Oh, okay. So do you...
But it is rented today.
Do you have a plan on how you're going to relocate the renters?
Yeah, that was all negotiated prior to the occupancy of the home. They know that there was a development application in process. They know roughly the timeline, and they've been accommodated economically. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is just about going back to the trees, and it's, I know you're removing 8 of the 11, you're supposed to replant 16, but you're only making room for 3. Is there any way that could still be adjusted and you could help to retain the urban tree canopy and add more than just 3?
Well, my history is as a builder. I've been doing this for 34 years. I'm not an arborist, and I'm not a landscape architect, but in my opinion, there just isn't enough room. And, I think Norm can speak to the survivability of these trees if you overplant them. We've tried very hard to maintain, the best trees on the property. We've tried very hard to, install new trees. But I personally believe in a philosophy when you're building homes that you want something that's going to last. And you don't want, hardship for the owners, and you don't want to make promises at council that you can't live by in the future. So, in my opinion, and this is backed up by our landscape architect, and once again, we have Norm here, our architect, our arborist, to comment on it. I just don't see the room for it. I think if we overplant the backyard, eventually they're going to die, and I think within a couple of years, you're going to be removing those trees. There's no room in the side yards. There's no room in between the 2 homes, and you know what the condition is at the front of the property. There's just no room there. So we've tried our best. We can accommodate 3. We've met the cash in lieu requirement. I think, take the money and use it to, improve parkland and other areas in Richmond for residential, for residents' uses. So.
And if I could add to that, we attempted to put more trees on the site, but the landscape architect pushed back and said that they wouldn't be survivable to put that many trees on the site.
I'm a big fan of trees. I'd love to plant more, but I don't think they'll survive.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
No. Are there any written submissions?
None, your worship.
We'll excuse you guys.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak to us on this item on the agenda? Anyone?
Move second, third.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. The next one, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, your worship. Item number 3 is official community plan bylaw 9000, amendment bylaw 10452, and Richmond zoning bylaw 8500, amendment bylaw 10453, RZ 22027435. Location is 4651, 4671, 4691 Smith Crescent, 23301, 23321, 23361, and 23381 Gilly Road. The applicant is Maskeen Hamilton Properties Corp. The purpose of the OCP amendment is to redesignate the subject properties from neighborhood residential to mixed use in attachment 1 to schedule 1 of bylaw 9000. and to amend Schedule 2.14 of Official Community Plan Bylaw, Hamilton Area Plan, to redesignate a portion of the site from Neighborhood Residential Stacked Townhouse 1.00 FAR to Neighborhood Village Center Retail and Office with Residential above 4-story 1.50 FAR, to clarify provision for additional density and building height for a new development that includes city-owned community amenities in the village center, and to allow new development on sites with a larger lot area to be considered on a case-by-case basis, such as the proposed development on the subject site. And the purpose of the zoning amendment is to rezone the subject properties from the single detached RS1F zone to a new residential limited commercial ZMU 53 Neighborhood Village Center Hamilton zone to permit development of a mixed-use development of approximately 186 residential units and 2 buildings ranging in height from 4 stories to 5 stories. First reading was May 23rd, 2023.
Okay, is the applicant here tonight? Yes, sir, did you want to come forward? Did you want to make a presentation or just await questions? Okay, written submissions, Mr. Clerk?
None, your worship.
Okay, is there anybody here who wishes to speak to us on this development, this Hamilton development? No, I don't see anyone.
Move second, third.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on that, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. I think this is a good one. 186 units total, 167 of them are strata, 19 are lemur. Many of them are family friendly. And I like the idea there's going to be a police station fronting Gilly Road as a community amenity space. I think this is going to be an example of some of the more affordable units that you can buy in Richmond. So I will be supporting it.
Any other comments? Councillor Wolf, just a minute. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, as I spoke about this item, planning and council, I was opposed to it, and I'll just explain a couple of the reasons why, as there's no presentation from the applicant. So I'll just highlight that this does abide by the tree bylaw and the requirements for replacement and cash in lieu and all that stuff. But I think that what's different about this one is there actually is room for more trees to be on site. There's a lot of amenity space, lots of outdoor space. One of the easier maps to see is on 92. And even the large row of mature trees along Smith Crescent that are going to be removed. And yes, there's hydro wires above. I'm very aware. I walk past these all the time. And the new trees are going to be roughly in the same location. There's a lot of impact that will also happen with the loss of the riparian area or the ditch habitat, which is quite a rich section of Hamilton. And to allow another development to come forward, remove every last tree on the property, 59, have to replace with the ratio 118, but making room for only half of those, only making room for 60 trees of any significant size. I do value the amenity space, that's the community police office, but there's also a lot of kind of private amenity space that's for this development that if you look on the picture, any of the pictures has a lot of space around for trees, and I think it's quite shocking that the neighborhood's going to find out that this development is not just large and bringing things that they want in the community, but it's going to be quite a shock to see the loss of the trees along Smith Crescent. I wish that there could be work done to make adjustments, but I haven't heard from staff or the developer that there's any hope to retain or use any innovative strategies like those covers where people can walk and utilize the space where there's grade changes and all that. So I'm not convinced that just the amenities go far enough for this size and scale of this parcel. And so I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Galanders.
Your worship, I just have a question as staff. For the OCP amendment, changing it from FAR 1.0 to 1.5 to allow more units on this property, is that strictly like allowing it to go higher? Or if it had stayed at 1.0, would it have had a smaller footprint and retained more of the trees?
Thank you. To Councillor Gillanders, through your worship. The portion of the site that is being redesignated is not in the same location as the trees that were referred to along Smith Crescent. Those existing trees are closer to Gilly Road. So the OCP redesignation will not have any impact on those specific trees. The portion of the site that is being redesignated also will, for the most part, provide the SRW area for the extension of Garapi Avenue. That said, the OCP redesignation is for the northernmost edge of the northernmost property. It will allow for a higher building height. It'll allow that edge of the property to development to match with the remainder of the property. So instead of being limited to 4-story stacked townhouses, it will be permitted to increase to apartment over parking.
Okay, Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, just quickly, Your Worship, I will be supporting this. This is a model development out there. It parallels the existing developments that we've got out there already. We're getting some low-income or low-end market rental, which is drastic need out there, but we're also getting 186 units in an ever-expanding community. And it's very much needed, and we're getting a community police office. We've been promising that for 10 years out there, and it's well needed in the community. If we were to build that office ourselves, it would cost us between $5 and $7 million. So I'm going to say thank you to the developer for giving us the space that we can have police presence out there, which is much needed. And when one really reads through the fine print on the report, it's an excellent development. And this one's on Gilly Road and Smith Crescent. If you look further down Smith Crescent, there's an awful lot of potential development going on there as well. So this fits in quite nicely in the community.
All right, with that, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried with Councillor Wolf opposed and on the rezoning. Someone want to move it?
So moved, sorry. So moved.
And moved and seconded. Further discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried with Councillor Wolf opposed. Mr. Clerk, the next item.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item number 4 is Richmond Zoning Bylaw 8500, Amendment Bylaw 10454, RZ 21941625. The location is 10611 and 10751 River Drive. The applicant is Fougere Architecture, Inc. To rezone and the purpose is to rezone the subject property from the industrial storage IS zone to a new low to mid-rise apartment ZLR46 Bridgeport zone, to permit development of approximately 181 residential units in 3 buildings ranging in height from 4 stories to 6 stories. First reading was May 8th, 2023.
All right, is the applicant here tonight? Did you wish to make a presentation or just await questions?
I'd like to wait for questions.
Okay, any written submissions?
Yes, Your Worship, we have a submission from Richmond residents Sandra Lindhall and John Carlson expressing concerns with regards to increased vehicle traffic, construction activity, including disposal of nails, proposed building height, proposed density, and availability of affordable housing.
All right, are there any parties wishing to address us on this item? Please come forward and introduce yourself.
I'm Sandra Lindell.
Please, first of all, have a seat. Have a seat. Is the microphone on? Yes. Okay, you go ahead.
I'm Sandra Lindell, and I'm here on my behalf and that of my husband. We live at 10766 River Drive and have been there 43 years. Wasn't sure I could be here, so thank you for getting these notes out. so I won't
Please pull
belabor.
that microphone right in, please.
I won't belabor I guess I want to speak to the impact on the neighborhood, which is listed in the notes that I've given. And hopefully, they will be able to mitigate some of these inconveniences. The development has gone from west to east along River Drive, and now it's at the east end, which is our side. But this has been going on for, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. Of particular interest to me is the nails that they leave on the road, because I've had 6 flat tires. But the real reason that I'm here is to ask, what is the city's guidelines for having low income and below market housing? And is this development going to meet that? As I've said in my submission, Richmond's grandchildren are being driven out of the city because they can't afford rental or to purchase. And we just have to make sure that we're not getting money in lieu, that those units for low income and below market must be kept. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We'll get you an answer for that. All right, is there anybody else wishing to speak to us on this item? All right, could we ask staff to comment on the low-end market rentals, et cetera, and the market rentals?
Thank you, Your Worship. The development before you today complies with the city's.
Please pull the microphone right in.
Thank you. Hopefully that's better.
Yep.
The development before you today complies with the city's affordable housing strategy. They are proposing to construct low end of market units on site. There are 18 low end of market rental units proposed on site. In addition, although this is an in-stream application that is not subject to the city's market rental policy, the developer is voluntarily also proposing to provide 13 market rental units. The low end of market rental units and the market rental units will all be secured by legal agreement registered on title.
All right.
I'll move second, third.
So it's moved and seconded. Councillor Day?
Just a couple of questions.
Just a minute. We're getting there. Okay.
Just a couple of questions of staff. So when we see such a large development, what is the procedure to make sure there isn't construction debris that's going to damage the vehicles and of the adjoining houses?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, in terms of damage to city infrastructure, there is a damage deposit required as a condition of building permit to ensure there is no damage to city infrastructure. In terms of construction, parking, and management, prior to building permit, they will be required to provide a construction, parking, and management plan that must be reviewed and approved by the city. In terms of the other items as indicated by the delegation, debris, waste, etc., we do rely on a good neighborly approach with our development clients. This developer is a well-experienced developer within the city, and we would expect that they would adhere to the city's good neighbor policy. I'm not aware of any complaints with respect to previous developments from this developer.
So if a neighbor discovered damage to their vehicles or their property due to this, they would then contact the city to be reimbursed by the developer?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, with the building permit, there will be contact information posted on site, signage with city contact information. If that city contact information will also, or the sign I should say, will also include developer contact information. So the applicant or any resident who experiences difficulty with construction related activity has two options. One is to contact the city. If it does fall within something that the city is able to address, we will address it. The other option is to contact the developer. And again, with this developer, we do have a quite long working history with them.
And so just to be clear, there's going to be a total of 181 units. 150 of them are going to be just strata apartments. 13 are market rental and 18 are low-end market rental.
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay, with that, we're going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried with Counselor Wolf opposed. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item number 5, Richmond zoning bylaw 8500, amendment bylaw 10457. Location is 7371 Number 4 Road. The applicant is Fournier Architecture, Inc. And the purpose is to rezone the subject property from the single detached RS1F zone to the medium density townhouses RTM2 zone to permit development of 19 townhouse units with vehicle access to General Curry Road. First reading was May 8th, 2023.
All right, is the applicant here tonight? Okay, we thought you might go away with your success on the last one. In any case, are you gonna make a presentation on this one or just wait questions?
Well, we'd like to wait for questions.
All right, any written submissions?
None, Your Worship.
Okay, anybody wishing to speak to this item on the agenda? Anyone?
Second, third.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Counselor Galanders.
I just wanted to comment on the memo that was provided by staff on June the 7th regarding the direction that I gave to re-examine the possibility of retaining some of the fruit flowering trees. I just wanted to say I do appreciate getting the memo back saying that the majority of the trees are in poor to extremely poor condition, so that it would be dangerous to retain them. I still find it difficult to say gung-ho to a project that takes down so many trees. I wish we could go higher and not change an area so dramatically from its ecological way, but that's the way it is.
All right, with that, we're gonna call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried with Councilors Galanders and Wolf opposed. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item number 6 is Richmond zoning bylaw 8500, amendment bylaw 10465. The location is 8635, 8655, 8675, and 8695 Cook Crescent, and the surplus portion of the Spires Road and Cook Crescent Road allowance. The applicant is Top Stream Management Limited. Purpose is to create the townhousing ZT103 parking structure townhouses, Spires Road, Cook Crescent Zone, and to rezone the subject site from single detached RS1E zone to townhousing ZT103 parking structure townhouses, Spires Road, Cook Crescent Zone to permit development of 27 townhouse units and 7 secondary units with a common parking structure with access from Spires Road. First reading was May 23rd, 2023.
All right, is the applicant here tonight? Did you wish to make a presentation or just await questions? All right. Any written submissions?
None, Your Worship.
All right, is there anybody wishing to speak to this item on the agenda?
Move second, third.
So that's moved and seconded. Counselor Day, you had a question or something?
I don't like this one. Instead of getting all these luxury townhouses, we could use this 4 levels to build far more affordable, smaller units. This is in the core of Richmond, Spires Road. It's within walking distance to rapid transit. And I think there's an advantage to the builder and to the neighborhood and certainly to the city of Richmond if this was densified and created into more of an apartment building than these 27 luxury townhouses. So I will not be supporting it.
Councillor Galanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe it was in 2018 or even before that the provincial government gave cities, municipalities the option to do rental tenure zoning, and it took us 5 years to do any rental tenure zoning in the city, and this was the area that we decided as a council, I wasn't on council at the time, that we wanted rental projects in this part of Richmond. It was walking distance to transit, and we've now done that, and this application came in just before that change that hasn't been in stream for very long. I think that it would have been good for an applicant to come forward and propose a development that is what council has decided they want in that area, which is rental.
Okay. We'll call the question then on the motion. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried with Councilors Galanders, Day, and Wolf opposed. So we move adjournment. Thank you, we're now adjourned.